think one of the most popular things you can do with Luminar AI is work on some of your landscape or travel photos. So that's what we're going to do in the video today. We're going to be looking specifically at some landscape photos, and I'll show just a few examples of how I would process these photos with Luminar AI. Hi, my name is William Beem. I am a portrait photographer in Central Florida, but I like to do a little bit of travel now and then. I'm not so much of a landscape photographer, so for today's examples, I've got some stock photos. We'll be working on those, but I think I might be able to give you a couple of ideas of how I would approach things with Luminar AI. We'll look at some things that are going through the template-based workflow, and then we'll also look at some that we just start off from scratch, and we'll look at a variety of tools. We're not going necessarily in any particular tab. This is the way I would edit these photos in Luminar AI, and hopefully that'll give you a little insight as to what's going on in my head and maybe some possibilities for you. All right, let's start off with this photo. I wanted to point out that when the things are loading, the title kind of has a little bit of a wave. In other words, you can see the light coming across from the L all the way through the R, and we'll point that out a little bit when it shows up in the future. But if you're wondering and waiting on Luminar, and it's like, is it processing or not? This is where you look. Look over here at the name Luminar AI, and if you see that it's kind of glowing and moving from left to right, that's the indication that something's processing. I'm going to start off this one with templates, and you'll see for this photo, and there's a couple of examples. So I'm using a tablet, but it's also kind of like working with, like your laptop with the little slide thing. So I'm just moving my fingers back and forth to kind of scroll to show how this works. And then you can scroll up and down to see what's available to you here. So I start off with this, and let's start off with waterscapes just to see what's there. Now there's a few of them over here. I'm going to try. It seems like there's always a black and white one. This silver flash is black and white. I want to try a couple of these, and I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. We may not go over all of them. And just to give you an idea of what the templates are that are inside of Luminar AI, and you may like what you see, you may not like it. You may think that, okay, that's close, but now I want to go tweak it. So all of those are options. Also, I want to point out down here, this little bar. If you don't like what you see, or maybe you think it's too much, you can pull this back, and it's kind of like an opacity slider for the look or the template that you're seeing. So keep that in mind. If it seems like, yeah, I like it, but it's too strong, you can pull this back. So that way you don't get the full effect of whatever template you're looking at. Let's take a look at soft fix. And I really kind of like this one. That's a really bright line of yellow for some folks, but I like the color contrast between the blue and that line of yellow that's going on. And if you look up here, you might see how Luminar is kind of glowing from left to right. That was the processing that I was talking about. I'm going to move on next to dark and rich. And this actually is close to what I like. I really love the silhouette of the fisherman in the boat here and how they're just kind of brought out by the light. But if we don't like any of these things, we'll try one or two more. So there's cold currents. Not my favorite. The black and white, I think is interesting, but it's not what I want for this photo because I love the color so much. And then the deadly reef, I think, brings in a bit of grain, and that's, for my taste, that's never something that I really want to do. So we're going to come down here to these three little dots. We're going to reset things. If you decided that you wanted to edit that template, notice that we had that option as well. When you click those three dots and the template was applied, there was an option for edit, so you could go right into the edit tab. So let's go ahead and take this over here and click on edit. One of the first things I like to start off with Luminar AI is this new composition AI. I believe in a workflow of texture, tone, and color. To me, texture is also about setting the canvas. I typically like a 16:9 composition for my work. And what it's doing is it's automatically saying for whatever composition that you have there and whatever aspect ratio you have, this is what Luminar believes is the best result. So I kind of like that. I'm just going to hit enter. And that way I'm working on this. The reason I want to do that first and get that crop or the composition out of the way is I don't see a purpose of editing part of a photo that's not going to be in use. And also looking at it in the aspect ratio that I want might change the way that I apply certain filters. One of the next things I'll do after that is I want to let the AI tools do the heavy lifting. So I'm going to take a look at the accent and the sky enhancer, and typically I'll bring each of them up to about halfway. I may not leave them there, but it gives me an idea what it's doing. And so once I've done that, I kind of scroll back and forth. Do I need more of it? Do I need less of it? And you can see how this fog layer back there gets really brilliant and white. You can see how the silhouette kind of comes out. I'm going to pull this back down roughly to 50. And now we're going to take a look at the sky enhancer, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull that up. You can see that's deepening things over here. I don't see that, other than deepening it, it's really doing a lot over here. So to me, this is a question of, do I like it with this kind of color as it naturally was, or do I want something a bit deeper? I think I'm going to pull this back down to about 15 or so and just leave it at that. So we've kind of made some changes. This is where we were before. I think it was a little bit flat at first. And with the changes with the enhanced AI, accent AI, it kind of really brought some contrast out. I'm liking what I see so far, but I think we can go a little bit further. I'm going to take a look at landscape and the tools we have here. Now, we've got some fog over here, which means I want to play with dehaze just a little bit to see what it does. And that actually kind of makes the colors richer. So you're pulling some of the haze out. I'm going to take this up to about 45 and leave it there. I also like the fact that we've got a lot of warmth here. And what I'm looking at is the contrast of the warmth from the sunlight and the blue over here. So I'm going to bring up the golden hour about 30. Now, the next one I'm really unsure about using. The foliage enhancer, I think, works very well in some cases, but it can easily go overboard. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it overboard and show you why it can go overboard. If I bring this all the way up to 100, you can see what it's done up here with the clouds and the sky, and it's just very unnatural. And also down here, it's almost kind of like we've got the Aurora Borealis going on. I wanted to see if it brought out anything in the mountain, and maybe a little bit. I'm not even sure if it's enough worth keeping there. And honestly, on this particular photo, I don't think it is. I think we have more concern about how it's affecting the haze, the fog, and the sky. So I'm going to leave that off. But I really like what we've done with dehaze and with the golden hour. So let's take a before and after look. So here's where we were, and here's where we are now with this particular crop. And quite honestly, I would leave this one just the way it is. There are a lot of other tools that we could work with. We could come over to creative. We could change the sky. I don't really want to change the sky because I like this color that's coming over here. If I swap this sky out and I don't have something with the sun coming over, it's not really going to work. I don't want to add sun rays. We could try something maybe with atmosphere. Let's say if we did a layered fog, and I'm going to pull that up about halfway and add some depth. It brings a little bit out here, but let me turn that off. I don't think it adds to it. I kind of like the fog that's just naturally there. I think that's a matter of taste, as to whether you want to do that or not. It's a possibility, but in my case, I don't think I'm going to use that on this particular photo. So for here, I'm going to call this one done. Let's go ahead and pick another photograph. All right, we have one that looks like a Savannah photo, and the reason I chose this is because I know that we have a template called Savannah, and I don't know if it's going to choose it for this one or not, but let's find out. Yep, there it is. So there's a collection over here where it's called Savannah, and there are a few different choices. And I know there's at least one in here that I really like. So let's take a look at, we'll go through Evening Chill. It's interesting, but it's not my favorite. I don't like how dark it got in the trees over here. The warming sun, I'm kind of digging. Bitter cold. I like the template. I don't like it for this photo. I want some warmth, I think, in this grass. You've always got, like I said, the black and white. That's kind of interesting. Cool. I might change the composition for this one. I like the drama in the clouds. Matter of fact, let's, just for the fun of it, let's leave that where it is. We're going to come over to edit. And remember, I mentioned the composition AI. Let's see what happens. I'm going to, again, go back to 16 by 9. And this is the composition it chose. But keep in mind, you can change it if you want to. Let's say that I wanted to emphasize the sky, at least with the black and white. And I'm going to choose that. And I'm zooming in when I don't mean to. And actually, I kind of like that one. I like the horizon being kind of on the lower third. And this, to me, this now means the sky is the story. It may not necessarily be that if I hadn't gone with black and white. So let's undo that. And down here in the corner, you'll see this little clock, and right next to it says history. So you can pull that on, and you can see the history of what you've done. So I can see where I've applied a composition. I can see where I've applied a template. So as I just kind of work my way back, it's kind of undoing the things that I've done. And we can go ahead and go all the way back to our original if we want to. I'm going to change my composition this time, I think. So we're going to go back to a 16 by 9. And instead of enhancing the clouds, I think I want to enhance the foreground with this grassy field, because I want to pull out some color. So the first thing I'm going to do after the composition is I'm going to come over here to the accent AI, and I'm going to pull that up about halfway. And I've got some texture in the clouds I like that. And we've also got some nice structure and warmth here. I'll try the sky enhancer, but I don't know that I really want it because I think it's going to overdo that. Yeah, in my mind, this is kind of like overdone for the sky. I think the accent AI really did what I want to do, and I'm not going to use the sky enhancer at all. I could use structure. I could go with a number of other things, even within landscape. I might bring up a little bit of golden hour, and that just really adds warmth here. Another way I could go about that, I'm going to undo this one, and we're going to go over here to local masking. There's always more than one way to get what you want done. I'm going to click a basic mask, and you can see you have your choices of painting, radial, or gradient. I want to go with a gradient, and I'm going to warm it up a little bit. As we change the warmth, you can see it's getting really warm, it's getting really cool. I just wanted to change the warmth of this grassy field. And we could also change the exposure. I could bring it down a little bit. I don't think I really need to because I kind of want that to show up. And that's too much light. So I don't think the exposure is really what I want to do. But what I do want to do is add a little bit of AI structure. And I'm going to play a little bit with the contrast. I don't think I need that much. Now, highlights, I don't really know how that's going to affect me one way or the other with this particular one. I can bring it down. To me, that's too dark. I wanted to enhance this just a little bit. So we'll bring that to 16. So let's take a look at our before and after. So this is where we started, and this is where we are now. I'm actually kind of happy with that. I like the sky that was already up there. I think there's a lot of drama, a lot of interesting texture, but I don't want to have too much of it by adding too much contrast up there. So that gives us a chance where we can use our local masking and a gradient in order to just affect that foreground that we like so much. Okay, on this photograph, it's kind of flat. I think I wanted, instead of going to the templates, I just want to edit this one myself. Okay, I've got a different kind of photo here. I want to take a look at this one just going straight through the edit process. I've got composition AI. It looks like it's got the 16 by 9, but I want to be sure, so let's click 16 by 9. And this is the recommendation it has. And I kind of understand. There's just a lot of empty space up there. So we're going to click that and choose this as what we're going to be working with our composition. Next, I'm going to go to Enhance AI, and I'm going to pull up each of them to about 50. It's interesting, but it's not where I want to go. So I've pulled these down. I think what I want to do instead is go over to the color harmony. So let's pull this down. We've got brilliance and warmth. You notice we also have color contrast, splits, and color balance. Let me open up the color balance. And this gives me a chance to look at the shadows, midtones, and highlights. And I can choose how I want to create that color harmony balance. So in this photo, for the highlights, the midtones, and shadows, I think I'm going to pull some colors around. So for the highlights, we're going to go into some blues and a little bit of cyan. The midtones, I want to see if we have any greens. So I'm going to pull some cyans and some greens, and maybe a little bit of the yellows as well too. And then our shadows, I think, are going to be cooler as well. So I'm going to pull up some blues with that. And a little bit of the cyan. Let's see what we've done. So we've definitely got a much cooler kind of image going on here. And I think there's a little bit more that we can do. I'm going to come in here to dodge and burn. And you can see where this starts off with lighten, and the overall amount is at 100. The strength is about 50. I'm kind of want to brighten up this area right in here for this dock or whatever it is that we're looking at. And it's not going to be perfect, and I'm not going to leave it quite this bright, I don't think. But I just want to make this kind of a little bit of a runway. And that is too bright to me, so I'm going to pull this down as far as the overall amount. I'm going to pull it down about halfway. So we can see if I turn this on and off, we've got a little bit of a change as far as bringing your attention to that. I don't want it to be full strength. I've just kind of set it over there. And I think that's good enough to just use this as kind of a runway going up in here. I think for the sky, I'm going to pull that light down a bit. So I'm going to go back over here to local masking. I'm going to add a mask, a basic one. And I'm going to use a gradient. It's a little bit too dark. And I also want to cool that sky down with this gradient. And maybe just a little bit of structure to see if we can enhance those clouds a little bit more. And now let's, I'm going to say that I'm happy with that. So we're going to go back and add another mask. This one, a basic one. And instead of a gradient, I'm going to use a paint mask. And I want to brighten up. I'm not going to use it quite as much as I'm showing right now, but I kind of want to brighten up these mountains in this area. And let's pull that exposure down. And there's a little bit of halo, so I'm going to go ahead and hit erase, and I'm just going to use the edges to try and take off anything that's kind of overextending off the top of the mountains. And that gives us a little something right there. So the whole idea that I had in mind for this one was just a very cold and cool morning, and that's why I really wanted to enhance the blues quite a bit. We might actually try and just finish off with one more thing, adding a little bit of mystical, because I just like having a little bit of a glow there. Let me play with the shadows, see if I like that. I think I want to open up the shadows just a little bit. And you can change the color of this. So if you want to make it, a little bit cooler in that, you've got another option down here to do that. And I think I'm going to leave this photo just the way it is. Okay, this is the last photo that I wanted to take a look at. So why don't we go ahead and look into edit. And the reason I wanted to choose this photo is because it's just kind of very dark and the greens are very dark as well. I want to see what we can do to open this up. So once again, I'm going to come back over here to Essentials. I'll go to Composition, and let's see how this looks with the 16 by 9. I tend to do things by 16 by 9, but you don't necessarily have to do everything with the same crop. This is just my preference. So it kind of brings us in a little bit closer. And too much there. That's what happens when my hand slides on the trackpad. We can take a look at two things. I always start off with Enhance after the composition and see if I like that. It's brought it out, but to me, it's still a little bit flat. You notice the sky enhancer doesn't come out because we've got a little bit here, but it's not enough really to trigger the idea of enhancing the sky. I'm not really thrilled with what I'm getting with Accent AI, so we're just going to go ahead and skip that. Instead, we're going to come down here to Landscape. I'm going to hit Dehaze, which kind of gives us a bit more contrast. I'm going to bring up Golden Hour, which the yellow really does a nice job of affecting the foliage. And then, of course, we've got the foliage enhancer. This is the one that I like, but again, I think be careful. If I bring this up to about here, I really like this. Is to me a very natural looking lush foliage. And that's setting at 19. If I bring this all the way over, it gets that kind of electric green that's just not really a realistic view in my mind. So 19, 20, maybe 22, then we'll just leave it around there. On the advanced settings, you can kind of change the foliage hue. I don't think we need to do that in this particular case. So what else do we need with this? We could play around with a few things. So let's go over here to sun rays. And where would the center of the sun be? I'm trying to look at the photograph itself. And if you're going to place the sun, you want to see where the sunlight's coming from. It seems like the sunlight's coming from back there and coming down a little bit. You can see where the highlights are on these ferns over here and where the shadows, it's very soft because you can tell it's an overcast day when this photograph was taken. But there's a little bit of light coming from back here, and that's why I placed the sun where I did. So once we've done that, we're going to bring up the amount. And this is where you can start playing games. Like people have commented about the sun rays. Maybe they didn't get exactly what they wanted. You can actually control that yourself. You've got the number of sun rays. By default, I've got 50 here. If you don't like the pattern that you're getting, you can use randomize, and you can change and get different patterns. Or you could change the number of sun rays to 1 and place the sun multiple times and put the rays exactly where you want them. So the options are there if you're willing to take the time and do that. You have a couple of options over here, like we said, as far as the amount of light that you're going to have coming through. I don't think this looks quite natural to me. I kind of like to have a lower amount and just a hint of those sun rays. You can change the overall look. I kind of like this lower for this particular photo because I want the light glowing and coming through here and then kind of fading off into darkness, because that's exactly what our image is doing. If we look at our before, you see how that's like we're in shadow on the edges. So it's almost like a little vignette. And now with these sun rays over here, it makes sense as to why the light is coming through the way that it is. You can do some changes with the penetration. That's extremely overboard for this photo, but it's nice that you've got the power to go ahead and put that in there. Also, the sun settings, you can change the size of the sun. So we can change the radius and make it look a little bit bigger. And you can change the radius of the glow and the sun glow amount. I'm going to say that I'm going to leave this kind of where it is. I just wanted to point these things out so as you're working with Luminar AI, you know what the tools are and what you can do with them. What I would like to do next is probably kind of illuminate this path back towards the center over here. And we might even move the sun a little bit, but let's try this out as far as going to local masking. I'm going to add basic. And let's try a radial. And this may not be a good idea, but we're going to try it anyways. So we're going to increase the exposure a little bit, kind of brighten up that area. And of course, I always forget, I'm hitting Command or Control I to change the mask. Basically, I want to invert the mask. And now that I've got it there, I want to feather this quite a bit more. And I want to warm it up. Probably too much exposure, so I'm going to bring that down. The idea that I'm looking for here is that you're actually going off into something that's just a little bit brighter. In other words, there's something to draw the eye. The other part that I'm going to have to do with this is come back and add another basic. In this case, we're going to use a paint mask, and I want to add a little bit of exposure. I'm probably going to have to bring this down, but I like to put the exposure up quite a bit so I can just kind of paint in where I want to look. And I want this path to draw you into that radial mask that I just created. Let's bring that exposure down. Usually if I'm going to do this, I try to make it maybe like a half a stop brighter than what the default is. At least that's the way I think of it. So if I bring this down to about 0.5, I think it's there. And I'm going to go back to this radial mask. And I'm going to bring that down just a little bit too. That adds the light. I'm going to go back over here to creative. We've already added our sun rays. I'm going to go back to mystical and just kind of smooth it out a little bit. I'm going to open up some of the shadows. I'm going to add a little bit of warmth. And that's our final result. So let's take a look at, this is our before photo where we started off. And this is our after, where we've kind of brought out the green. We added just a little bit of warmth and a little bit of the mystical to add some glow in it. And we've also brightened up the path to kind of take us deeper into the woods, presumably off to grandmother's house. Now, keep in mind, this is one that we just built. We can go ahead and save this as a template. So you can see where there's save, and you can see we can add a template name. We can also fade this back, just as we did with any of the templates that were provided by Skylum. So I just wanted to give a look at how I might go ahead and edit some landscape photos in Luminar AI. There are a plethora of tools. We didn't cover every one of them. Hopefully it gives you some ideas. There are things we can do to enhance the sky. We can enhance the colors and tones. We can change how you perceive a pathway or direction. We can draw your eye with a little bit of light with some dodging and burning. A lot of tools in here, and we will continue to look at more in future videos. If you like this video, please go ahead and share it with a friend. And If you also like it that much, go ahead, click the like button. That lets YouTube know that we're doing something right. If you'd like to see more of this, please click the subscribe button and then hit that little bell notification icon next to it. So that way you'll be notified the next time we come out with a video. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next video.